Hello ladies and gentlemen, and this is me, Andrew. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the things to consider when you're trying to start a first aid, CPR, and AED business. So one of the primary things is the passion. Some people, they go in it for the money, and eventually you might make a little bit of money, but the participants are going to see that you lack the passion, so that will reflect upon you. So if you do not have any passion to actually go into the first aid, CPR, AED business, then unfortunately I would not recommend that you do that. One of the things that you can do though is hire instructors that do have the passion, and then you just stick on the administration side, and that might work eventually. So you need to get qualified, and I'm going to talk about getting qualified for the American Red Cross, and then in some of the other videos I'm going to talk about the American Heart Association, the Emergency Care Safety Institute, and the other agencies that you can become an instructor for. So with the American Red Cross, you need to take the First Aid, CPR, AED certification, and then you will need to take an instructor level certification, and then after that you need to have an authorized provider agreement, and then a licensed training provider agreement. The licensed training provider agreement is the contract set up between the company and the American Red Cross. The authorized provider agreement is between the instructor, the company, and the American Red Cross. Partnerships with the business can be very, very rewarding, and especially with two minds, it can make the business progress a lot faster than a single person or a single entity business. The only thing that I do want to caution you with a partnership business is a lot of people, they go in with their friends, colleagues, and stuff like that. And then sometime down the road, when they start making actually a substantial amount of money, it really grades against the friendship, and then actually have no friendships to break because of the partnerships that they have. If you do set up a partnership, make sure that it's either 50-50, that there's definitely an attorney involved, and that everything is set in stone. If the contract is too vague, unfortunately another partner can take your money and run. That's very unfortunate, but make sure that if you do have a partnership, that you both definitely agree on everything. The company name is very important. That's something that helps the participants identify with you, what you do. Sometimes people, they have this projection of a company's name, they use it for 2 or 3 years, and then they end up changing it sometime down the road, which is fine, but just know that there's a major price tag that goes along with changing the company's name. The website, the marketing materials, the logos, the company shirts, the price is actually pretty enormous when it comes to changing a company's name, but it is doable. So once you have a company's name, and if you want to change it sometime down the road, I'm not saying it's fine, there is a big price tag to it, but make sure that you have a company's name that you're willing to associate yourself with for about 10-20 years down the road. Some of the legal aspects that you need is, of course, the EIN number versus using your Social Security number. That's a tax identification number that the IRS, federal IRS, associates with your company. I definitely do not recommend that you use your Social Security to identify yourself with the company. Make sure that you have the extra layer of protection by having the IRS give you an actual company's EIN number. You'll also need a state legislation. So one of the great free things that is out there is called the Small Business Administration. There's a Small Business Administration in each of the 50 states. It might actually even be in Puerto Rico. And with the Small Business Administration, they actually set you up with a counselor, and they actually provide free counseling, which is pretty extraordinary, especially as a new person. I utilized them for 3 years, even before I started setting up my own company. The only problem though that I had was there was no counselors even within the surrounding Washington DC area, like PA, VA, and MD, that knew sort of the type of business that I was trying to run, which was the First Aid, CPR, AED business. But I ended up getting paired with somebody, and they said even though he didn't know about the First Aid, CPR, AED, the blueprint in terms of running the company and the foundation was the same thing, and I could take that blueprint and I can utilize it for the First Aid, CPR, AED business. And that's what I ended up doing. But now that you have me, a successful business called Campaign Pay It Forward, we've made over $250,000 and our revenue stream keeps going up. If you have any questions, you can comment on below, or you can get the First Aid, CPR, AED business book that I wrote on Amazon for $25. I'll link in the description below. So there's multiple liability insurance that I definitely recommend that you get even before you start teaching. The first one is if you have a commercial property, get a commercial property insurance. The second one is the general liability insurance. Make sure that it's $1 million or above, depending on the type of classes we do. So even though we're labeled as a first aid CPR AED business, we teach wilderness first aid, lifeguarding. We literally teach everything that the American Red Cross has to offer, including BLS, emergency medical responder, and a bunch of other classes. The third liability that I recommend you to get is actually the educator insurance. And most people don't know about this, and this is if for some reason someone thinks that you provided the wrong information in class, the liability will actually hold in terms of covering you. God forbid that you provide the wrong information to the participant under a certification. Another thing that I would recommend you to do is write a business plan, also known as a business proposal plan, usually used for funding and just to get the blueprints and everything sort of hashed out before you actually start a business. I wrote a business plan going in knowing that I will receive no funding. I'm very against credit cards and loans because there's certain things that happened in my past life. And so I started off basically with one mannequin, adult and infant, one AED trainer, and several gauze pads and stuff like that. The basic essentials needed to run a first aid CPR AED business. And it wasn't even a business then, it was like a side gig. I still consider my business a side gig even though we are making $250,000. And that's because all of our instructors have full-time jobs. And even though this is sort of like a side job now, it's like a full-time job, but I'm getting off the track. So funding. As I stated before, I am against loans. Our company basically owns everything, all the equipment down to the very basic, the pens, the paper that we own. But if you do want to take out a loan in a very, very small amount, maybe $1,000, $2,000 at the most. Don't try to go out big. Definitely start off the first aid CPR AED business as a side gig and then work your way up. As I said before, I had only one mannequin, one adult, infant, and the basic necessities. And then over a couple of months, I was able to build that as I progressed in revenue. If you do want to take out a loan, definitely check out the interest rates. Make sure that you have a solid proposal plan, a business proposal plan. Make sure that you show how you're going to pay that back. Make sure that you have assets that are able to cover you as collateral and things like that. So location can go two ways. Location can be front end where it's a heavy traffic area and then people are coming to you, or you can utilize the website or the American Red Cross class posting to drive business to you. And that's what we ended up doing because the square footage was, per square footage in terms of the rental, was a lot lower. Other things to be aware of, which most people don't think about in terms of location, is parking. The first area that we rented out, which was a 3 to 4 month lease, there was actually only 3 parking spots, and it was actually very cumbersome. When you are renting out a facility, which we did, also be aware of the surrounding businesses around you. We had a meditation business that was renting out on the other side of our office space, and of course, as people know, when you use the AED, it makes a loud sound, it's very vocal, and of course our instructors are also very vocal because we're trying to present a class to 12 people, and it ended up butting heads with the meditation business because they wanted quiet, peace and quiet. So make sure that you know the surrounding businesses in terms of the rental property that you want to be in. So in terms of the basic equipment that you need in order to start the first aid CPR AED business is mannequins. If you want to buy one mannequin for an adult, one infant mannequin, and some of the other essentials, you can purchase that second-handed, which is fine. If you want to go hard and you think that it's going to be a viable business, then I would recommend that you purchase 4 adult mannequins and 4 infant mannequins, 4 AED trainers. I would recommend in the beginning that you get it second-handed. The equipment might be sort of shabby, but as I said, it's all about your revenue. Don't invest too much money. Make sure that it's a viable business in your area, and I'll talk about marketing a little bit later, and in terms of how to price out your classes in another video. So on top of having the mannequins, you need the breathing disposable lungs, you need breathing barriers, you need gauze if you're doing first aid to do the wrapping and direct pressure. You need gloves. So when we buy all these equipment, in the beginning we used to buy them little by little, and then as we progressed in terms of the revenue, we started to buy them in bulk. I highly recommend that you go to Costco. I've never seen gloves so cheap at Costco. It's usually about 50% of the price of any medical gloves, and it's just as good. In terms of the mannequin, as I said before, second use, if you do want to buy the state-of-the-art equipment, I definitely recommend the Big Reds. They are pretty pricey. They run about $300 to $400 per mannequin, but the retention rate that we've had because of those mannequins actually made up for the difference of the cost. A lot of people ended up coming back to our classes even 2 years later just so they could practice CPR on the Big Reds, and those are the mannequins that light up on the shoulders and then they light up on the head to simulate providing oxygen to the head. One of the things that many people they forget, and we didn't realize until about 4 to 5 months down the road, we had a lot of complaints about people, elderly people and people with disabilities, in terms of putting the knees on the carpet or on the hardwood floor that we had. And we had quite a bit of complaints. Our complaints practically stopped once we bought knee pads. And I'm not talking about the actual for the knees, I'm talking about the garden pads. They're about $10. You can buy them at Home Depot, and they're for, like, you know, kneeling down. It's a pad 10 by 4 maybe. And our complaints dropped by 80% because we bought those knee pads, which was pretty substantial. So I highly recommend that you definitely buy those. Marketing is a big issue. I'm going to make another video about marketing, but just to sum it up in terms of this small video, in terms of what you need to know with your hitting the ground running, is we used to, for the first 3 to 4 months, market to everybody. For Vistaprint, we got about $5,000 flyers, and we started to do door to door. We put them on gas stations, we put them in businesses, we put them, you name it, we put it there. And then later on, 6 months to 8 months later, we actually started changing the way that we started to market. And then about 2 years later, we actually pulled all of our marketing. We no longer basically give flyers, we don't go door to door. It was all based upon word of mouth. And that's something that I found out to be a big difference. In terms of trying to market out, do mass marketing, only about 1% of the people actually even look at it, and then even less actually come to the class. What ended up being a big benefit was when you made those human connection to connection contacts. So, you know, you talked with friends, you talked with coworkers, things like that. We advertised in class. In the beginning, we would advertise when people were leaving. We would hand out the flyers and say, if you enjoyed the class, please, you know, tell other people. But then it ended up becoming an awkward moment when they didn't actually want to take the flyers. What is big beneficial, and what made a big difference was when we actually had the flyers down on each of the individual seats, and then they could take it when they wanted to. So we didn't force them, there was no awkward moment. We put them down in the beginning, and then they took it at the very end if they wanted to, and most of the time they did. Word of mouth is a big marketing tool, and it's free. Can't say no to free. I'd recommend that you make a website, so that way you drive business to yourself, you make your company look more legitimate. There's a bunch of free websites out there. I might make another video if people ask for it in terms of some of the free websites that we utilized. We did utilize a free website, and then about 5 years later we ended up getting a professional website. You'd be surprised how much it costs. Our professional website costs about $12,000, but as you can see based upon our website, how good it looks, and we'll definitely be able to link the person that we utilized. If you want to know, you can comment on the description below. Groups to market to. We had an issue with this. In the beginning, we wanted to market to any of the groups. We just wanted the business. So we were marketing to healthcare providers, nonprofit organizations, construction workers, military. We were just all over the table. And what I ended up finding is pick 3 groups and then try to market and emphasize your marketing towards them. Don't try to go all the way around. You'll end up either generating too much business, and then sometimes actually business collapses on itself because they grow too much, or it just becomes too problematic because you end up getting inundated with questions. So pick 3 groups that you want to market to, and then try to utilize them and then market to specifically for them. If you found this video of value, please definitely subscribe, hit the like button, and then make sure to send this out to other people. Thank you so much.